Okay, so now that we've gotten an introduction to the general design drawings, what we really need to dig into are the exactly what the building looks like, what are the details, what's the information that we need to pay attention to. So with that, what I've done is I've already gone through and reviewed at least one of these building sets of structural and architectural drawings, and I found a lot of places where there's information that's unclear to me. Uh, or where I maybe wasn't looking in the right spot and I needed to find more information or whatever it might be. So all of these are notes and things like that that I've added to the plan. Um, and oops, uh, and I will say that I asked a question and there was actually information on the sheet uh, about that, but it just took me a little bit of time to get there. And usually, what I'll be doing is I might ask a question on plan just while I'm putting things through, something's unclear to me, stuff like that. But what we're going to try and do for our projects is I will go through, or our design team will go through, and we will figure out hopefully a lot of those issues in advance. We can't really expect our team, our 3BL Studios team, to have all of that knowledge to know exactly what to look for. But we will go through some of these things as we go through this video and the further videos for this project so that you can have a general idea of things you might want to look out for. So this is your foundation plan for the structural drawings here. And the way that this works, just ignore all of the other colors. We'll get to that sort of thing. Uh, the way that this works is what they're showing is these sort of dark lines around dark areas around the edges. They've got these hatched regions where they've got diagonal lines. And then you can see that they've got some flat slabs here and things like that. So what's happening is, and then actually, sorry, you can also see these sort of white areas in the middle, though I have put some highlights on them just for uh, design's sake and things like that. So what this would normally be is this would be these white lines along the interior would be ribs, right? These are our interior ribs that we talked about before. And then what happens is they've said, okay, for these interior trenches, and by that they mean the ribs, the minimum depth of those ribs is 21 inches. And we're going to get into that in just a minute here about exactly what that depth means. Where do you measure that from? Do you measure it from the bottom of the slab or the top of the slab or wherever? But we'll get into that. We'll look at the details. Then what they say is for shaded trench depth, the depth is 44 inches or 3'8". So what that means is that these areas around the outside with the dark gray, the minimum depth is 44 inches. And again, we'll get into that in just a minute. Then we also have a note on here that says T equals 13.5 inches for post-tension slab on grade thickness, which means that these slabs are 13.5 inches thick, which is really thick, but it's an important to note. And then the last thing is that the width of all of these trenches is 12 inches unless it's noted otherwise. So you can see there are going to be some of these places where they have to make it 1'5". It's 17.5 inches is the thickness of this trench here. So that's one thing that we need to pay attention to is are all the ribs. In general, make sure that you're also reading all of the plan notes. Now, they may not all apply to us, but this is something that you want to make sure that you're doing. So you can say on the notes, it says RES 0 sheets for general foundation notes, RES 300 for typical foundation details. I'm not sure if those are the actual right numbers. It could be that what they've got is some standard notes. Actually, I guess they've got all of these notes. I wouldn't worry about this usually. It's generally not necessary. This indicates Simpson hold down. That's something you don't need to worry about. Basically, how does the wood attach to the concrete? And then these little hatched areas on the plans indicate slope concrete like we talked about. This note number 5 shows a step in the slab. You guys will know that from our previous trainings. You can see these steps in the slab. This is indicating a break line with the slab slopes. which you guys know. Number 7, in all trenches, provide a minimum of 2 number 5 continuous bottom of trench tip. What that means is that's the reinforcing for now. Don't worry about that. And then number 8 is, this is the big one we talked about in the last video, or no, sorry, 2 videos previous. So step bottom of trench is required to meet minimum 3-foot O frost depth requirement from contractor to verify that steps in BO trench coordinate with site grading so that 3-foot O frost depth is maintained. All of those things, you can find that. And then there's some details in here for about reinforcing. You don't need to worry about that stuff. But we do need to make sure that we're always meeting minimum 3 foot of frost depth below the grade. Okay. Then number 9 has some information about stressing tendons and things like that. That's the pre-tension stuff. And number 10 has the same. Don't worry about those sorts of things. So the big ones you need to worry about are, let's put this in yellow, this, 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 and part of this. And maybe this is also kind of useful as well here. This one has at least some information. And if you want to familiarize yourself with these things, you can do that. Okay. So now with that now that we've looked at the plan notes, these are really important things for us to know before we start digging into everything. There are some other plan notes. This is about slab tendons. Don't worry about that. All dimensions in top of concrete elevations to be verified with architectural drawings. Yes, we have to make sure that architecture will especially control that when it comes to the elevations of things and those dimensions. So we need to make sure that they match up. This says provide a 6-inch millimeter minimum polyvapor barrier below all post-tension slabs on grades. Essentially, what you want is a piece of plastic, more or less, that goes under the slabs on grade so that you don't get too much moisture coming into them from the soil. Not anything for you to worry about, but at least something for you to know. And rigid insulation to be provided below slab at all exterior patio and garage aprons tip. So what that just means is at these little slabs here, these little garages, and at these patios, they put a little bit of insulation underneath. Again, not something for you to worry about. Okay, now with that in mind, let's also go through. Let's now that we've looked at our plans. Oh, and it looks like there's some other notes here, right? There are some keynotes. If you see keynote 1, right, it means a step in the concrete, step in top of concrete. So this is, say, keynote 1. Keynote 2, number 5, don't worry about that. So keynote 1 we care about. Keynote 2 we don't care about. Keynote 3 looks like it's about reinforcing. We don't care about that. Keynote 4, it says refer 3S220 for moment frame embed and plate connection information. Again, this is this is for the wood framing that's above. And then number 5, frost depth of shaded trench to be 48 inches for the extent of all frost walls. This end total trench depth equals 56 inches. REG technical report for more information. So this one is something that looks oops, went to the wrong page. Looks a little bit confusing to me, but this is going to be really important. And let's see if we can figure out what they're trying to say here. So let's see if we can find keynote 5 here. Now, this may be something we have to come back to. It's entirely possible. I'm trying to see if I can find keynote 5 on the plan. It's going to be around the edge somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure that I see it. Maybe you've seen it. We're looking for one of these little diamond-shaped things that has a 5 inside of it. So it's entirely possible that you see it, and I am completely missing it right now. So if you're screaming at your computer screen, apologies for that. But we will probably find it as we go along. It could also be possible that it doesn't apply to this building, and what they have is they've got the same keynotes for every for every building, and that it applies at, well, maybe one of the other buildings. So keep that in mind as well. Then we also have another keynote schedule about top of concrete elevations and things like that. So you can say, they've said, let's see here. So, well, more or less, when we see these little keynotes that are, again, it's like the little diamond shape and it's got a letter inside of it, that's indicating the top of slab or the top of concrete or top of slab elevation. I had clouded this one because it related to a question that I asked down here, what's the top of concrete? Because if we notice at architectural, if we come out to this, there are these columns that come back above. So I wasn't sure what those top of column elevations were. You can see them clearly in here. But again, this was a point where I wasn't reading the keynote. And I said, oh, hey, there's a keynote here. F, top of concrete elevation is 107 foot 10. So keep in mind that you're paying attention to those sorts of things, and that might make a difference. By the way, one of the biggest things that you'll note is, I know I clouded over it. If we hide the cloud, you'll see E is the top of slab elevation equals RE arch. And this is going to be a place where architecture and structure do not match in exactly how they show how these the slabs and the grade beams should interact. But we'll get into that in the next video. So we'll dig into that now, and then we will go through and figure out the next steps. But the next thing we're going to be looking at is A, the differences between architecture and structure, and B, the structural details.